Heyo, I'm Will and I've been doing digital art for like 6 years, and one of the most common questions I get asked is what canvas size do I recommend? I thought about it and it turns out the answer to that is a bit longer and complicated, which is why I'm making this video today. I'm gonna explain what canvas size actually is, things to consider when making your canvas, which size I recommend for which purpose, as well as common mistakes and misconceptions. I'm also gonna put a bunch of my or other artists' drawings with the canvas size on screen throughout the video. What exactly is canvas size? For those of you who are new to digital art, when you make art in any program, you usually work with pixels. And like with traditional art where you use a sheet of paper or a canvas that has a specific size in centimeters or inches, for digital art you will have to type in your canvas size or select it from pre-made options. Usually this is measured in pixels, but you can use inches or centimeters to set your canvas size in most programs. However, unless you need to make something with a standard size like an A5 printed comic, I wouldn't use the centimeter or inch option because it doesn't really give me an idea of how high the quality of the image will be. With pixels it's kind of the other way around. If I tell you to imagine a magazine cover, you probably all have roughly the same idea of how big it is, but if I tell you to imagine 2000 by 3000 pixels printed at 300 dpi, well, most of you probably don't even know what dpi is. The pixels you type into the width and height boxes are still easy to understand because they determine the width and height of the canvas depending on how many pixels long and tall it is. But when you type in a different dpi, it seemingly changes nothing. Yet some people vehemently believe it will change your file size or that you need to have it set to 300 or you will burn in hell. Which is not true regardless of which deity you believe in. Anyways, more on DPI myths later. So when I got my first iPad in 2019, I also didn't know what size to set my canvas to. It was very confusing and it felt like if I did it wrong, it would ruin the entire artwork. So I'm gonna tell you this. The worst case scenario for making your canvas too big is that your tablet or PC lags and then you can just scale it down. And if you make it too small, you will probably notice when your clean sketch or line work looks pixelated and you can still make it bigger. That's literally how I learned which size to use. I also asked other artists on what canvas size they usually use, but that really varies from person to person and from art style to art style. I literally choose different canvas sizes for different projects depending on if I want the drawing to be very detailed or more simple. From my experience, anything from 1.5 by 1.5k to 7 by 7k pixels is the normal range of canvas sizes. But different sizes are better for different scenarios, so let's talk about some specifics. Things to consider to choose your canvas size. Canvas size isn't just a random number that artists decide on by throwing a dice. Crazy, I know. There's different things like your art style, hardware, program, and use case that affect the decision. Trust me, I also wish there was a simpler answer like always use 5k by 5k pixels, but that's not really the case, so let me help you find out what might be best for you. Line art versus painted. If you already know that you're gonna line or not line your drawing before you make your canvas, then that's gonna make things like 1% easier for you here. Personally, I don't really know if I will line a drawing or not because paintings happen on accident for me. But you can always adjust your canvas size after you made the sketch. From my experience, drawings with line art usually need slightly bigger canvases than lineless styles. Let me explain why. When you're painting a sphere, the color is the sphere. It takes up all of the pixels of the shape you made. When you use line art, the sphere is made up of the line art and the color you used, meaning that the line art takes away some of the space you could have used to shade the object or to add patterns or other details. That's not really an issue when the object is big on your canvas, but if it's smaller, everything will get pixelated and confusing when your object isn't a simple sphere, but a face that takes up only a small amount of the canvas. Lined art also often looks pixelated faster than painted art because the contrast of the dark lines is very strong, whereas the pixels of something painted often blend into each other better. What I'm trying to say is, If you plan on using Lineart, a bigger canvas might be beneficial. I would say don't ever go below 2K pixels for width or height unless you're drawing something very simple or up close like a portrait. For full body drawings, I recommend a canvas height of at least 2.5K pixels and up. If you have a painterly style, you can still use these measurements as well though, or go smaller if you need your file size to be less for some reason. Simple versus detailed. The other thing that goes hand in hand with Lineart and painted art styles is how detailed your drawing is supposed to be. If you're drawing a half-body character with an average design, going with the measurements I mentioned just now is totally enough. However, if you plan to do splash art type of stuff with lots of small details and also important focal points like the face being further away, I would recommend using a bigger canvas. That way, no matter if you do or don't line your artworks, the small details won't be super pixelated when people zoom in to admire them. And if you're planning to print it in poster size, it won't be blurry but nice and defined. Since I work in Procreate, that doesn't really work well, but more on that in the next section. Device and program. The maximum canvas size you can work with is going to be limited depending on the device you draw on and which program you're using. Phones and tablets that aren't attached to a PC will usually start to lag or crash once you reach a certain amount of layers. Older PCs or laptops with less RAM will also have that issue. This can be annoying if you're like me and you like using a billion layers, but hey, traditional artists usually only have one layer and manage to draw shit like this, so that's a limitation you can learn to deal with. Specific programs also have layer limits. As far as I know, Clip Studio on PC and tablets theoretically allows you to use unlimited layers, aka limited by when your device starts to lag and or explode. And I think most other drawing programs work that way too. Whereas Procreate on the iPad has a layer limit that is directly linked to your canvas size. I work in Procreate and the layer limit is the bane of my existence and the reason why I spent a ton of money to get one of the new iPads with higher RAM. Quick explanation for anyone thinking about getting an iPad for drawing. If you want to work in Procreate with lots of layers and big canvases for stuff like splash art, character design, VTuber models, get one of the iPads with the big 1TB storage because they have more RAM than the smaller storage options, which directly affects how many layers you will be able to use in Procreate. I know some people use Clip Studio on the iPad, which is sadly a monthly subscription, to use more layers, but it will still be limited by lag. The way I still squeeze in more layers after I hit the limit in Procreate is by duplicating my layer and then merging the less important layers together on the new one. Is it annoying? Yes, but I love Procreate too much. iPad rant over, let's talk about different canvas size use cases. Smaller canvases are usually used for things like emotes, thumbnails like YouTube thumbnails, profile pictures, or websites with a lot of images that need to load quickly. The less pixels your canvas has, the smaller the file size will usually be. File type and transparency also have an impact, but this video is not about that. Emotes on Twitch and Discord are usually around 100 by 100 pixels big. That doesn't mean your canvas has to be this small when you draw them. I usually go with 300 by 300 and I wouldn't recommend drawing emotes on canvases bigger than 500 by 500 because that would allow you to add in a bunch of detail nobody will be able to see in the end. But also 500 by 500 still allows you to use the emotes in a bigger size as stickers, for example. Profile pictures that are literally just a head I would keep at around 1K by 1K pixels. For YouTube thumbnails, the size I always work with is 1080 by 1920p because that's the correct width and height format to use. Like if you did 1K by 2K for a YouTube thumbnail, it would end up with a black border or cutting off part of your thumbnail, and you don't want that. So use the correct format. Use cases for mid-range canvases. As I already mentioned, for most drawings I wouldn't go below 2K pixels on either side. My go-to canvas size for any drawing is 2800 by 2400. It offers enough room for details while not being too huge and giving me lots of layers to use. This size works well for social media as well, but note that it will very likely still be compressed. I also use that size frequently for commissions, and if you happen to be interested in commissioning me, I'm now using Artistry instead of VGen, and I have different commission types to hopefully fit your budget. If you would like to commission me in the future, I do have a commission tag role on my Discord server. You don't have to use the server for anything else if you don't want to, but it is a friendly community for artists and art enjoyers. You can find all links in the description, and now back to what I was talking about. For character sheets, which have a full body drawing, I usually use 3.2K by 2.8K pixels, which does get a bit pixelated on the face, so if your program allows it, I would go a bit bigger. However, for character designs, I really do need a ton of layers, so this is the canvas size I stuck with due to Procreate's limitations. Anything that you don't want to print or don't want to print really big is also fine at that size too. Use cases for big canvases. Anything with lots of detail like splash art benefits from bigger canvases, so I usually go with at least 4.5K by 3K, but you could totally go bigger if your device allows for it. I think anything up to 7K makes sense, unless your drawing is extremely detailed and needs more space than that. VTuber models are one case that needs huge canvases, since you're drawing an entire body, but the face needs to be detailed enough to zoom in on during stream. My model canvas was 7.6K pixels tall and 4K pixels wide for reference, and I had to work on it in Clip Studio because Procreate would not have allowed me nearly enough layers. I think going up to 10K in height for VTuber models is still good, but you should definitely ask your client beforehand how beefy their PC is if you plan to have a lot of separate parts for Live 2D. For anything that you want to print big or in very high definition, using bigger canvases is always recommended because scaling down your artwork is easy, but scaling it up will make it blurry. For printing, you also need to keep the DPI in mind. But because I know most artists don't actually understand how this works, I'm making a separate video on it, which may be uploaded depending on when you're watching this. My Patreons will get early access along with HD files of my art, timelapses, PSD files, and more in case you want to check that out. Common mistakes and misconceptions. A misconception I see all the time is that DPI somehow changes your file size, to which I say this. If you put in your canvas size in pixels, it does absolutely nothing. If you don't believe me or you want to learn more, I show and explain it in the DPI video. And even for printing, the DPI size can always be changed later. What matters is how many pixels your canvas has. Again, more on that in the DPI video. A mistake I have unfortunately dealt with when I was starting out was to resize the canvas after I already made the line art. This isn't necessarily a big issue if you're doing it, for example, because you notice the composition looks weird and it would be better if there was more space on the left side, for example. It is a big issue when you made your canvas too small overall and want to make the character bigger after you already drew it, because the line art will become blurry. To avoid this mistake in the first place, if you're not sure if your canvas is big enough, I would resize it before you start your line work. Or to start the line art on the face or smaller details, so you can immediately see if your lines are too pixelated, then you can just make the canvas bigger and start over without losing too much progress. However, if it's already too late, some programs have different transform tool modes that will make your line art less blurry when making it bigger. In general, when in doubt, I would say rather go with a bigger canvas than a smaller one, because you can always size it down. The only limit is what your device can handle before exploding. There's lots of different use cases that I haven't mentioned in this video, so feel free to talk about those in the comments. If this video was helpful, consider leaving a like or checking out my Patreon to get early access to videos, HDR, timelapses, and much more. It should be around my birthday when this releases, just saying. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. Thank you so much for the fan art and special thanks to my Patreons. See you all for Artfight. Will out.